Good evening, folks. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Sophie Wilson. I'm the town manager in Orono, and we are convening tonight to have a discussion about public services. I thought the best way to start the night would be to kind of kick off with an overview of what public services are. Where we have, I think, a fairly small audience tonight, might it make sense to do some introductions with that? Do we want to start online? Council Chair Perry, would you like to introduce?
Hi, Tom Perry, joining you remotely.
Other folks online? In the audience?
As for us, Andy Barrett.
Excellent. So I'm hoping that tonight will be a community conversation, not just a one-sided presentation. I'd like to start off with a brief kind of presentation, a brief overview of what public services are. And for that, I will turn it over to Rob Yerxa, who is the Director of Public Works for the town of Orono.
Yes, good evening. Again, Rob Yerxa, Public Works Director. I joined the team at Public Works in 2008 as the Public Works Director. So I've been here almost 15 years. Public Works, it is in some ways pretty self-explanatory, but I think there are a lot of different services that we provide that people may not necessarily tie to public works. The first is probably the most obvious, and that's maintenance of the travelways. Our goal there is to keep them safe and efficient for all modes of transportation. So that includes bike, ped, mass transit, commercial traffic, as well as the more common passenger vehicles. We also maintain the solid waste management services for the town. So that includes the curbside recycling and trash collection program, as well as the landfill out on Taylor Road off Forest Avenue. We also maintain Riverside Cemetery. So Riverside Cemetery is open all summer to residents of the town of Orono or former residents who have bought plots in the past. So we work to maintain the grounds as well as perform internments, maintain stones, maintain the roads in the cemetery, all the things to keep the site a respectful and of course state law compliant site. We also have a pretty significant role in the town's environmental compliance. So Public Works maintains the stormwater discharge permit that we need for our urbanized area. We also have permits at the landfill that we need to stay compliant with. But we also work in a lot of other areas with our environmental services coordinator to work to improve the environmental compliance of the town in all sorts of different respects. The biggest one probably outside of the DEP permitting compliance work is the tree board work. We work closely with the tree board to responsibly maintain public trees, but we also work to maintain or grow the tree inventory. And so we've been doing a lot of work recently in developing a management plan for our urban forest, and tree board's working hard on that right now. We also look at invasive species and insects. So invasive vegetation like buckthorn or Norway maple, but also invasive insects like emerald ash borer. You may also see on our environmental services page, we have a brown tail moss section. Some of those things that our environmental services coordinator does a great job working on both the implementation of those things as well as communicating all of our efforts out on our website. So I'd encourage you to visit the environmental services coordinator's webpage, which is in the department section of our website. There's a lot of information there available to people who are concerned about any range of environmental issues that may affect the town. So Town of Orono has about 40 linear miles of roadway. That translates to about 89 lane miles of road. So it's a pretty big chore for the 15 people that we have on staff. General maintenance includes all the things that you would think about in terms of sweeping, pavement marking, roadside mowing, all those types of things, but also includes stormwater management, maintenance, inspection of the stormwater system, all those kinds of things as well. The capital infrastructure work also is included in public works. That's the bigger project. So that's the paving projects, the lighting projects, all the things that we may look at for larger investments in the community. Winter maintenance is probably thinking about right now. Like I said, the town maintains about 89 lane miles of road. We have about 8 acres of parking lot, both municipal in the downtown area, but also that includes the schools. And then we maintain about 17 miles of sidewalk throughout town.
Excellent.
Other work that we do includes fleet maintenance. So we need equipment and trucks to perform all those tasks that we do, and those require maintenance. And so our facility out on Kelly Road has a wash bay, so we can keep things cleaned and maintained that way. We also have a full-time mechanic, so we can perform a lot of preventative maintenance and repairs in-house. I talked a little bit about the Environmental Services Division already. That again is permit compliance, but also a lot of other education and outreach efforts that involve invasive insects, invasive vegetation, all those sorts of things you may find interesting. Like I said, I encourage you to visit the website for that. Cemetery operations, we work throughout the summer maintaining, and the state requires that we keep a 2-inch mowed surface for a cemetery with veteran burials. So we take that very seriously. So we work pretty hard to keep the grounds well kept. But we also recently did a paving project out there. So we got some of the roads fixed up. We also work pretty hard to keep our stones adjusted. There's hundreds and hundreds of stones out there that all tend to start to settle from frost action and things like that. So we're always working on getting those adjusted too. So I mentioned a little bit about the 15 people. So we have 15 people on staff in the winter time. We have an additional position that we share tasks with Chris over at Water Pollution Control. They help us out in the winter time with sidewalk work primarily, but they're also kind of a floater as well. We can help with parking lots, things like that. Or if we have somebody out with injury or illness, we're able to kind of move them up and fill in and still maintain the same level of service. The equipment and vehicles that we have range from big heavy duty 10-wheel trucks that you see is probably the primary use for those is of course in the winter time to plow all of our roads and spread salt and sand. But we use them year round to haul construction materials, pick up brush and leaves in the spring and fall, all those sorts of things. We also have a number of smaller vehicles, a couple medium duty trucks that help fill in behind the larger trucks in smaller areas, parking lots, and things like that for snow removal, but those are constantly in use. Probably the highlight of our truck fleet is the sweeper. That's a truck that you see quite often, of course, in the summertime, which helps keep things looking nice, but really it's a very important tool for our stormwater compliance. The sweeper is something that we can sweep up all the winter sand that we put out early in the spring before it gets washed down in through our storm drain system. To one, keep that water that's running directly into the rivers through our storm drain system cleaner, but also prevents clogging and all the issues that can come along with too much sediment building up in those pipes. So getting the streets swept as early as we can is great for aesthetics and dust control and all that. But one of the major reasons we want to do it is to make sure our storm sewer system is as clean as possible. We also use the sweeper to clean catch basins. So those drains in the street need to be cleaned every once in a while. And the street sweeper can clean out all the material that settles in the bottom of those basins. We clean about between 50 and 100 basins a year. There's a total of about 650 in town. So we clean them when the capacity of the basin reaches about 50%. So we inspect them every year, make note of how much sediment is in there, and all the ones that are over 50% get cleaned. Other equipment we've got we have 2 front end loaders. I think you probably have noticed in the downtown area, we use the front end loaders to plow the parking lots and the streets downtown. It's turned into a very efficient way to keep things cleaned up downtown. So really nice addition to our fleet was the big plow that goes on the front of the front end loader. We have a facility, like I said, at 135 Kelly Road. That's where our offices are, and that's where our fleet maintenance is conducted. We also have some small facilities at the landfill and at the cemetery for storage and to keep equipment and things like that. So the overall operating budget for Public Works, which includes all those services, is just over $2 million. In addition to the operating costs, the annual infrastructure investment is about $1 million. This past fiscal year, it was 1.2.
Rob, can you talk just a little bit about our tax funded portion of the infrastructure budget and how we manage that?
Sure. So infrastructure investment can come from all kinds of different sources. So one of the major sources that you'll see we use to work on local roads is, of course, general tax dollars. We work to maintain a consistent draw on tax dollars each year. There may be some years where you see the infrastructure budget maybe $1.5 million, and it may go down to 800, and then but that is generally non-tax dollars or non-general fund dollars. Usually those investments are either grants from state or federal sources, or in the most recent years, we had bond funds that were able to go to some larger projects that we invested in.
So we try to keep that draw at between $800,000 and $850,000 a year. So we try to keep it level. That's right.
So I'm not exactly sure what the exact number was this year, but the total budget for infrastructure was 1.2 million. About 800 of that was in general tax dollars.
835,000.
There you go. So yeah, that's a general overview of Public Works Services.
So what I thought we would do is talk about WPCF next and then come back and talk about some of your larger infrastructure projects, because I know I've gotten some questions about kind of what we're doing now and what the plan is. Chris, Prue.
Superintendent WPCF. So WPCF, for those that don't know, is Water Pollution Control Facility. First referred to here in Orono. Some communities refer to it as a wastewater plant or water treatment. Here in Orono, it's WPCF. So we're not as broad as Rob is as far as the infrastructure. We're specialized to just concentrate on collecting the sewer that comes from homes and businesses, bringing it to the plant and treating it. So we collect it with a collection system. Orono has roughly 23 miles of pipe and 500 manholes that are situated to access that system to do maintenance and cleaning. So we use that system to convey the water to the treatment plant. And to assist us in that, we also have 4 pump stations located in different parts of the community that are there for areas where the topography will not allow the water to drain by gravity. So we just use them to lift it to a point where it can. We have a siphon here in Orono to get water from one side of the river to the other versus some communities in the, all the communities have pipes on bridges. They don't like that. I believe Old Town has one to get Milford's treated in Old Town, so they have a pipe. But we have a siphon that's below the dam that gets everything on Marsh Island to this side of the river. So we have to maintain that as well. We have an aggressive program to take care of that system. Orono has spent literally millions and millions of dollars over the last 20, 30 years, rehabbing the system, whole neighborhoods. Those areas were identified with what we call a CSO master plan. So a CSO is a combined sewer overflow. If we experience flows that are too high for the treatment plant to handle, they are spilled to the river untreated. As bad as that sounds, it's worse to allow the flows to come into the plant and flood it out. Would be much worse than a bypass. Those bypasses are where it's licensed, we're allowed to do that. But the CSO master plan is there to get the community to try to get that to stop so it doesn't happen anymore. And that's just simply fixing your infrastructure, your pipes, broken pipes. That's where the water comes from. Groundwater gets in, cracks, breaks, sump pumps, roof drains. There's a variety of different ways that the water will enter the system. So, and Orono's done well over the years. 30 years ago, we had 30 to 35, sometimes 40 bypass events a year. And as of late, we've had very few. We've had a little uptick lately because of the intensity of the storms. But this last decade, we've had several years with 0. And another few years with just 1 or 2. This past year, we had 3. But even those are much smaller than they used to be. When we had a lot of bypass events, they were very large. They were in the millions of gallons. And today we'll have a bypass event that might be only like 700,000 or 500,000. It's always unfortunate that you have to do that when you realize, oh, it's just only 500,000 gallons. If we only could have, but you can't. You get to a point where you have to let it go because your plant will wash out. So we get that to the treatment facility, and that's a whole other different operation. That's where the water gets cleaned. It's done with a biological process. It's actually living organisms is what cleans the water. And we just provide the environment that that bacteria likes. Air is what it really likes. And air is a really expensive, it's expensive to put air in water on a continuous basis. So it's an expensive operation. We have a mechanic in-house that can do, I like to say that if he can't fix it, if it's broke, he'll find a way to fix it. If it's broken, he can't find a way to fix it, he will find a way to fix it. We send very little out. We fix everything in-house. The only thing that we're really lacking on is electrical, because we don't have a licensed electrician on staff. So we're very limited on what we can do there. But there's a lot of equipment to care for at the plant. There's a lot of tankage. Our facility does remove sludge from the system. There are some types of facilities that don't, just the nature of how they're constructed and the method that they use. But we have to move sludge out of our system on a daily basis. And you might have seen right now, that's a pretty hot topic in the news, sludge disposal. But quite simply, if you don't take sludge out of the system, it's going to go to the river. It's just, there's no way to stop it. Biological process grows and produces sludge. And as wastewater comes in, which is the food for those bugs, they eat and grow and they produce mass. And we have to take that mass out of the system. We truck it ourselves. We dewater it with our own equipment, and we truck it ourselves to Juniper Ridge landfill, where it's buried. We're one of the few communities right now in this area that so far hasn't been turned away. And we feel pretty confident that it's going to stay that way. We're a small, as far as the amount of sludge we bring up there, it's small compared to some communities. We bring up there in a week what some people bring in a day. Sometimes they might bring up as much as we bring in a month. A lot of the bigger communities, South Portland, they have no other option. They were trucking it up here. I do believe they've been turned away as well. So in this whole treatment process, we work under an umbrella of criteria set forth by the Clean Water Act on the water that we discharge to the river. It is still wastewater, although it's been treated. It does still have pollutants in it. And we're bound by federal law that those pollutants cannot be more than a certain amount. And it's a variety of different things. It's pH, it's BOD, which is a measure of how much bacteria is left in the water that's going to consume oxygen. Because once you put it in the river, that's what it's going to do. It's going to consume oxygen. And if it consumes too much, no oxygen in the river, the water goes bad. Once again, oxygen, air. That's all you need to clean water is just air. That's that simple. As long as it's biological, if there's anything toxic in there, gasoline or something, that's a different story. But, so that's always a challenge sometimes to, you get rain events and stuff, it can be kind of touchy to meet your license. It's just the nature of the business, but you do what you can. If you do violate on your license, they call it a non-compliance. Depending on what it is, if it's a rain event, then you're a good operating plant, they kind of leave you alone. But some communities have numerous non-compliance and problem plants. They'll give those facilities consent agreements.
So what's important for people to know is that Orono does not have a history of non-compliance. That's been important.
We've been 13 months without a non-compliance. And the last one we did have was due to a rain event.
The rain just gets it's a contained, it's ideally it's supposed to be a contained system, right? So it's coming from my house. Would you tell me 90 minutes from my house to your plant? Is that what you told me?
Oh, that sounds probably boring.
But that's not that important.
Page
but-
plates, right?
Yeah, but it's water gets into the closed system though, right? And that's what does it.
Right.
It doesn't go, it doesn't drain automatically. It's not supposed to drain into the system, but you get so
It
much
gets in a
water.
variety of different ways. It gets through the manhole covers on the street.
Yeah.
And they're not watertight.
Yeah,
Pipes that are in the ground then the water table is high.
Yeah.
You essentially have a pipe that's underwater.
right.
It's surrounded by water. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And if that's one of the older pipes that has a lot of cracks in it, the water is just going to enter the pipe.
Yeah.
There are a lot of sump pumps in town. There are a lot of the older homes before the 70s were constructed with perimeter drains that were connected to the sewer. You're going to remember that before there was a wastewater plant, all the pipes went to the river. So it didn't matter what they were connected to
Yeah.
because everything just went to the river. So a lot of the older homes, the perimeter drains that are there to keep the water out of your basement are connected to the same pipe that brings sewage to us.
So, okay. Yeah.
So, that's an area for water to inflow.
like grandfathered, or I mean, it can't be. Obviously.
Well, yeah, kind of. Orono has never taken the approach to force people to remove them.
Yeah.
We encourage it. When we do new construction, Rob and I are both replacing pipes in the street. We'll bring new stubs from the new pipe onto the property, out of the right of way. So it's there for people to connect to. Some will come right out during the project and say, hey, I want to hook up. The guy's already here. It's going to be cheap. And other people choose not to, but we don't force it.
I think one of the issues we have, we did look at trying to force people to start removing those connections, the perimeter drains and the sump pumps. But when we don't have appropriately sized and good, and when our storm sewer system is not necessarily appropriately sized for the neighborhood, might not even exist. And what is there is probably 60 years old and starting to rot. We don't want to add more flow to it. So we've kind of been a little bit in a catch-22. I think, when you talk about WPCF,
So is the storm sewer connected to the treatment plant?
No, Orono has a separated system.
Okay.
A perimeter drain that's connected to a sewer is not really considered a storm drain.
Right.
But the drains that Rob takes care of in the streets with the catch basins, those are not connected to us.
And they go right into the river. But
Yeah,
that's what you've got.
The storm sewer system.
Yep.
Of course, through ditches, curbs, catch basins, and then the buried pipes, collects what stormwater is in those catch areas and then conveys it directly to the river. The only amount of treatment that is done is that most of our catch basins have what they call a sump. So it's an area at the bottom of the drain for larger particulates to fall out before they actually make it into the river. Originally to protect the pipes so that they didn't have silt build up in them, but they also double as a nice way to catch a lot of the silt that comes off the roads, larger particulates before they get conveyed down to the Penobscot or Stillwater rivers.
so, Chris, did you have more you wanted to talk about or?
Best practice on the collection system. Just like our discharge license that have parameters that are under federal law, we also have regulation from the state DEP to maintain our system. We can't just leave it and let it plug up, and we have to maintain it. Well, I mean, you want to anyway, but we have to show them that we'd regularly clean it every year. We're out when the warmer temperatures, cleaning, flushing. And a lot of times with that activity, we find areas that, this can't wait, we need to fix this now. That stuff pops up along with the larger infrastructure projects, the whole neighborhoods and stuff. So it's really never ending. It's like shoveling against the tide. But we have specialized equipment that allows us to do that fairly decent. Yeah. We also have a lot of sewer lines that are not in streets. They go across country through right of ways. Those are much harder to get to with our equipment. Some of them we can't, but we still visit them. We keep them cleared. If there was an emergency, we could get something in there. Or if we had to pull the flusher in with one of Rob's loaders, we could do something like that. It's been done before. But they're the larger pipes that don't really need flushing as much as the smaller ones, and they have much more flow, so they kind of keep clean themselves. But we still keep the right of ways cleared, and we'll pop the manhole covers and make sure the water is flowing as it should. A lot of times, if you have roots intruding into your system, they'll show up in manholes, so we look for that.
Some of the trails that our residents enjoy along the river are actually sewer right-of-ways that's actually cleared. So you enjoy the top and Chris enjoys the bottom. So I want to be able to open it up for some discussion, but when we talk about Chris's operating budget at WPCF, that is 100% funded through user fees. So that's not funded through the tax base. That's not part of your property tax. And last year, his capital investment budget was quite small comparatively. And the reason for that is that Chris is just finishing up a really large project in the Mahaney development.
Haiti is all new pipe. That was a lining job. So they didn't tear the pipe out of the ground and put in new pipe. They lined the old pipe. Several different systems they use. It's PVC. And that was in conjunction with work that Rob did for drainage and all new streets, curb cuts.
So one of the things that I've appreciated is that Chris and Rob work very collaboratively on capital investment. One of the things we don't want is to fix a road and then have to come in and dig it up for a water line or a sewer line. Chris does sewer. We work with Orono BZ Water when we do our capital investment planning. I just wonder if you take just a couple of minutes to talk. I think your approaches are fairly similar in how you prioritize, but then also maybe some of the big projects coming up, then we could maybe turn it over for some other discussion.
Sure. So this past year, some of the larger projects that are complete or very near to complete included reconstruction of College Heights and Chapel Lane off College Avenue. That was a pretty significant infrastructure project where we rebuilt the roadways, did some sewer work, added a significant amount of drainage. The other project that we mentioned was the Mahaney development. So that's Mountain View Drive, Frost Lane, Aaron Place, up off Forest Avenue behind the school. That was a full reconstruction. More investment was done in the sewer on that project than in the roads. We still rebuilt all the roads and created some new ditching, things like that up there. That was a major project that is almost finished. All the major elements are complete. The contractor will be back in the spring to kind of clean up the mess, I guess, and get grass growing in the ditches and all those sorts of things. Some other big projects that you may have noticed were we paved a significant piece, if not all, of Bennick Road from around the Keith Anderson building all the way to the town line. That was a project where we partnered with Maine DOT. The town provided half the funding and DOT picked up the other half. So that was a nice collaboration where we were able to get kind of 2 for 1 in our investment on that. We also replaced a very large, very deep culvert out on Route 2. That was the traffic closure that we did out there, out past Kelly Road. That pipe was about 40 feet deep and conveys a unnamed tributary, but a lot of water goes through there, and it had basically failed. There was also some pretty significant slope failure there too. That was another case where we partnered with Maine DOT. The town picked up 1/3 of that cost in this case, and DOT paid 2/3 of that. That project was about $1 million to do because it was a very involved excavation. The pipe that was put back in, was the box culvert, is much longer, which allowed for much stabler slopes, and is bigger and designed for to allow for fish passage and all the things that the other culvert was creating a barrier for. So that was a big project for this season. A few other things. We finally finished our 5-year College Avenue reconstruction. That project was something that we did almost entirely in-house. All the paving was done by Public Works staff. So kind of worked our way through, 5 years ago, College Avenue sidewalks were in pretty rough shape. And so now they've all been reconstructed. We did about 1 mile of sidewalk this past year out there. So some bigger projects that are coming up this year, we're working with Maine DOT right now on a planning grant project that the DOT again is picking up 50% of the cost, and Orono is picking up 50% of the cost for a study for the entire, essentially a large portion of the Route 2 corridor. So from Kelly Road all the way out to the Old Town line. We're going to look at all sorts of different things, all elements of infrastructure. So with the goal to make bike ped improvements, traffic flow improvements, the overlying goal of this entire project is to bring the corridor up to ADA standards, improve safety for all modes of transportation, but also bring a better feel, a village feel to the Route 2 corridor, where I think right now the Route 2 corridor is very divided. You kind of feel differently in different sections of it. And so the goal here will be to create a project, a very large project that will sort of tie that entire corridor together and create a feel for Orono that I think we're lacking right now. So lighting will be included. That failing storm sewer system that we talked about is included in all of this too. So the planning grant that we're working through right now will create a scope of work that the DOT will then take and create a project that we will be requesting federal support for the entire project all at once. So some of it could approach 25 or $30 million to rebuild the entire corridor, for which the town will be probably responsible for about 10%. So large project, lots of really big benefits, still a big investment, but $3 million to leverage 30 in a project that would probably create a 20-year product for that entire corridor, I think is something that we're gonna take a close look at.
By 20 years, do you mean it'd be 20 years until you have to do something else with it?
Yeah, reconstructions tend to be, that's the goal. Some of the elements of the infrastructure, the storm sewer, electrical infrastructure would have longer lifespans, but a full reconstructed pavement structure, about 20 years. That's what you look at, 15 to 20 years.
So it'd be like a traffic mess for a little while, and then 20 years, I'll go 20 years without having to, see a flagger on Main Street again.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the goal from here to completion is about a 5-year period. So it's gonna take us a year or so to get things put together and actually create the project. But then we'll phase our way through. We won't just tear up the entire corridor all at once. So
Just do it at night.
phase our way through it hopefully and
I think one of the things that project would help us do is right now, we're trying to deal with a real problem at the Westwood intersection when school is beginning and ending, and it's a huge problem. But then when you look at solutions there, it backs up onto the interstate. So that's a problem. And then you look in the other direction and we have a failing intersection at College and Park. So by being able to look at it all together, we think we'll be able to actually get a more efficient project at the end of the day, because we won't inadvertently be creating problems just down the street, which is what we kind of has happened at times.
right.
Yeah.
We're trying to avoid them, but yeah.
Yeah.
But anyone who uses or travels through the Park Street corridor understands what we're talking about. All the new left-hand turns generated by the new developments to have people come out and go left back to campus toward Rangeley Road has created issues at Washburn Place, Colburn Drive, all of the access points. And so we're hoping to have a comprehensive strategy to address all of those instead of just looking at Washburn Place. Okay, we fixed that one. Now let's look at the next one. It doesn't make sense. We want to look at the whole corridor all at the same time.
One of the things that I was most interested in hearing when Rob and Sophie began talking about this a year or so ago was how integrated bicycle pathways and pedestrian enhancements and were in the plan. So it's not just we're building the road for cars, we're really pulling the town together in a lot of ways with this project.
I think that's one of the things that makes it a strong application for DOT is that we're very clear. It's not just about moving cars more quickly through the street, which is a good thing. I think, did you have any?
When do you think that you'll in the planning phase, when do you think you'll have like the point where you're gonna get a green light from DOT? I mean, what's the
So the
federal?
The planning work that we're doing now will probably take until into the fall, depending on how successful we are with data collection in the spring. So they won't start working on the project itself until 2024.
You mean project like?
So what will happen is the DOT will take the results of the study, the report that we generate for the study, and that will be the basis of their what's called a RAISE grant, which is a federal grant to support the project. And so that will have to go through its process. And if awarded, which from what I understand, RAISE grants are typically well supported at the federal level. The funds would go through the DOT, so it would be a DOT administered project at that point. And they may, depending on how they choose to do it, they may develop the project in phases. So design a section and get it out to bid so that can be constructed while they're still working on design in other areas. That's most likely the path they'll take just to get the project out there and delivered.
Just when do you see like citizen involvement becoming more, I mean?
So we're planning, as part of the planning grant, planning project, there is citizen involvement happening in September. So between September and October, I think, on the timeline.
2023.
Yeah.
Yeah, this year. I think it's gonna be 2.
Oh,
May do
Great.
one earlier than that as well.
Okay.
But we'll push that information out through the website, Facebook, all those things. We're in the data collection phase right now, so the engineers are doing a lot of things now just to kind of create a baseline for our planning process.
and
I've got a quick question, little separate from this, but kind of along the same lines. So how is the reconstruction of the bridge on Stillwater Avenue going to affect us here? And when is that going to affect us here?
that's a good
Well-
Rob question.
There are a lot of pieces. 3 or 4 years ago, that project was being planned. The large culvert on Route 2 is being planned. You may recall they just recently replaced the bridge on the overpass.
Yeah.
That was included. So all those were they were all trying to avoid each other. So they moved things around a little bit. The issue is that the bridge, when they bid the bridge, my understanding is
Twice, right?
it came in double what the budget was. And so right now that project is about 2 years behind. My understanding is that DOT has chosen to separate the highway work, so the work on the roadways approaching the bridge, and get that out sooner, which is great because there's an intersection improvement on Stillwater and College Avenue that is going to significantly help us manage University Main traffic. If the improvements are successful and do what the modeling says, Stillwater Avenue will become the more efficient way to get to the interstate, and which should help clear up some traffic issues that we have downtown. But that project will get out earlier, I think, than the actual bridge construction. But yeah, there's going to be a point where they kind of come together, and it's going to be tough to, hopefully where the thought would be maybe we can work through this area here first, and we're past College Avenue by the time that's, or vice versa. It's
So that's a ways off than the bridge.
the bridge.
It is, I should
The
say.
bridge is a 2-year project, and if they haven't even awarded it yet, that puts it, yeah.
I have a question. I don't know if it's appropriate now, but I mean, I'm here because of my concerns about safety of College Avenue for pedestrians and bicyclists. And what I just heard is a little bit concerning to me that, the University of Maine traffic, which is the problem for us living near College Avenue, is going to be, increasingly directed towards Stillwater. So I don't need to raise my concerns now, but I'm just asking whether I should, because that's the set of problems that I'm bringing to this meeting.
I think that's a great question. You want to talk about that?
Well, I don't know. It's, I don't know what to say to that. The intersection improvements, we just worked our way through a traffic calming policy that may help, that could be applied to that area.
What is
I
that? I'm sorry,
know-
could you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. So we just completed a traffic calming plan that we're doing the final revisions for. And that plan, it will be create a process for residents to bring issues like the one you just brought up to the town to consider enforcement increases, signage, and all the way up into infrastructure improvements like raised crosswalks, flashing crosswalks, those kinds of things. So once complete, and that should be done very soon, we'll be posting that and you'll be able to take a look at it. It's something that I think will creates a lot of opportunity for, I'm looking at the screen. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but I'm talking to you. And but creates a few different opportunities for public input and a collaborative effort to try to solve traffic calming issues like the ones you just brought up.
So could you just kind of elaborate just a little bit about what your concern specifically is to see?
Well, I mean, I could go on. I go on way more than you'd like to hear about. But I mean, the speed limit on College Avenue is 25 miles per hour, and that is almost never the case. I mean, cars routinely go much, much faster. And I mean, there's a lot of cultural issues here. There are a lot of out-of-state plates because of what, but in any case, the traffic is much, much faster. As you know, when you increase just by 5 miles per hour, the percentage of, fatal or severe injury goes up. Now, I have a son who commutes. There are very young children on my street. There is a major apartment complex in which people walk to campus or to town. And they are dealing with cars that simply do not stop and proceed at 40, sometimes 50 miles an hour. This is a daily occurrence throughout the day. This is not an exception. This is the norm. And, and then in wintertime, when the walkway is either too icy or unplowed, I mean, the plowing has been fantastic. They're on top of it, unbelievable. And thank you for everything that's done in this town, which is great. But, sometimes it's just too icy, too slippery. And so pedestrians are forced to walk in the street and cars continue to drive in this entirely unsafe manner. This is going to have an impact one day. This is surely going to be a problem, as it has before in this town, on this street. So, I talked to Chief Ewing about this, some years ago, and he placed a speed flasher on College in front of that apartment complex. And that had some modest impact. I mean, I did, just anecdotally, I can say that in my observation, cars did slow down. Also, just want to add here that cars will not stop for me, my family, even with my child, when we are in a crosswalk that is marked with those green signs that say pedestrian crosswalk. Cars will not stop. I mean, the majority of cars will not stop. Some will, the majority will not. Chief Ewing placed a flashing speed sign on College for the inbound traffic, which is the worst of it, is the stuff coming off the highway. And that did have a modest improvement, but then that was removed earlier this year. I spoke to the new chief who said it was needed elsewhere. And that's totally understandable. I realize that I have no monopoly on this problem. But I came to this meeting hoping that, however expensive that such sign may be, that another one be purchased so that we get some relief on College Avenue, because it is just really a disaster. I mean, it's inhumane what, if you want to be a pedestrian on College, what you are experiencing. And then I'll just wrap it up with just two quick things here. I mean, I would hope in the longer run, and maybe your very exciting plan for the Route 2 corridor can include some connection here, but the street is way too wide for for what it is supposed to do for pedestrians and bicyclists. And so maybe something like a segregated buffer zone for bicycles with those rubber poles that can be placed along the street to mark off a bike lane, which then could be removed in winter as they are in Montreal or Quebec City, for plowing. I mean, this would be, I'm sure, quite expensive, but would be, a great safety improvement. And then actually I have some other, bike friendly suggestions, but those can go at another time as that opportunity arises. I would love to share all that. But, just to sum it up, I mean, it really, and so when I hear that, traffic is going to be further directed to Stillwater, that is just a frightening prospect for those of us who live here. Cars do not really take us into consideration as they commute, as these people commute every day, the thousands of cars that come in at 40 to 50 miles an hour along College Avenue. So any help, any relief we can get would be, tremendously appreciated for our neighborhood. Thank you.
So I will say, as part of the Forest Avenue traffic calming improvements that we're planning, there are some raised crosswalks and another one of those feedback signs included. So DOT recommends when you get those that you rotate them to keep them fresh in people's minds and eyes. So the one that is currently on Forest, that's on Bennett Road, will be rotating back to College Avenue shortly. So we do plan to put it back.
So you have Rob and Chris, if you have questions, so they answer their phone and their email anyway, anytime you have questions. So you don't want to put you on the spot, but it's not often you get them both in a public meeting where we're looking at you saying, what questions or concerns? So I think Michael absolutely kicked off the intent of this meeting, which is to hear from you. So we're going into our budget process. One of the words that you'll hear, or group of words you'll hear from staff often, is service level. And what we mean by that, or what are the services that we need to recommend to the town council or put in front of town council for them to consider as they go through the budget process. So one of the things we're hoping to understand today from you, I guess there are three things. Number one, we want to answer any of your questions. We want to hear your feedback about things that you really like or things that you wish we would do a little differently. And also, if you see kind of what are your priorities for public services, what's important to you? So now it's your turn.
Sophie?
I'll just
Oop.
say real quick, I just want to kind of, I'll just piggyback on Michael Lang's comments. I'm here for pedestrian and bicycle safety. I have a daughter at the school. She's at the middle school now, and so I'm teaching over there. So I'm really aware of students, the influx of students and parents and all that whole thing that happens. And I'm concerned about pedestrian safety with the tough challenge of also University of Maine traffic too. I mean, but I'm really glad to hear about the exciting work on Route 2. My immediate concern is that the crosswalk signals in the downtown area are not functioning. So as a parent, that freaks me out that I have beloved children and their friends that they don't have clear signals about when it's appropriate to cross the street. There's the manual street cross helper. But I mean, I don't know, that's great that that person is there. But yeah, those are my big concerns, is getting around and traffic calming issues, so.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess my big question is like, what's going on with those crosswalk signals?
Well, right now we have one that got ran over.
Oh, shoot.
So some of the biggest issue with the ped signals is the buttons. They're very finicky. And so sometimes they work really well, sometimes they don't. There's some work that we're gonna do right off the bat. One of the things we're gonna do is what's called a pedestrian lead time. So what it does is when the walk signal comes on, it's still all stop. So people can get out into the crosswalks and be visible and be seen before traffic is given the opportunity to go. So we're going to make some of those changes this summer.
Okay,
But I can check out the ped signals and check them out. Usually what happens is that they're not working and then I go and then they've decided to work again. So, but we can definitely take a look at those. Once they're kind of all interconnected. So once we get the one on the corner on the corner of Mill and Main fixed, which is supposed to happen on Monday or Tuesday, I'll have them go through all of them and check them out.
The other thing that you can absolutely do too is if you see them not working and you would like, if you shoot an email to info@orono.org,
okay,
just letting us know, that comes into the manager's office and we shoot those emails where they need to go to keep department heads apprised, and we'll let you know what we're doing when we get those.
info@orono.org.
info@orono.org. What else is on people's minds?
I missed whether Rob said whether there was a timeline for the Route 2 project that I had some input in, and I'm very excited to see it start happening.
Yeah, so the pre-design work is still going to take another year or so. I think the goal would be to get some phase of the construction started by the end of next year. So it all has to be complete within a 5-year period. So the entire corridor would be done by 2026.
Right. And then my other question is, there was talk of creating a route that went from like the Sailor Development Page Place, basically through the woods, just avoiding the road. What's the status of that project?
You want me to take that one?
Yeah, why don't you?
So Fiona, it is aspirational. I think we really would love to see it happen. And as we look at projects, we're trying to maintain the ability to make those connections. There is an awful lot of neighborhood work that needs to happen, and a lot of people that love the idea, but maybe not the location of having it. So right now, we're working with folks in the Sailor development to kind of figure out what how connections can be made there. It is on the list. My guess, Fiona, is that it's probably going to come up again in comprehensive planning that starts in 2024 to try to get more than just a concept. So in the 2023 plan, it was definitely just a great idea. I think what council will need to get feedback on from the community about is much more of like, here's a general line and let people come out and talk about that to make it a little bit of a stronger project as opposed to an aspiration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a great way. I mean, if kids could get safely, there's a lot of children live out that way. If they could get safely from that area to school, that would hopefully take a lot of traffic off the road. I'm guessing the kids would be very happy to go through the woods to school rather than get in the car with mom and dad.
Yeah.
Is it a path through the woods or is it an actual road that you're talking about?
So what we had talked about was a road that would be blocked off, so only for emergency vehicles and plowing and things like that, with lighting and call box or boxes for safety purposes when you're gonna put something like that through the road.
So kind of like the bike path.
Yep.
Yeah, it would be
But
lit,
vehicles wouldn't go on it, like personal vehicles? like-
No.
Okay.
but it would be built such that if there was an injury out there or something like that, an ambulance could access it. We could maintain it in the wintertime, that kind of stuff.
Sweet.
It's a great idea. Fiona should definitely put her name forward to be on the comp plan. I think that,
Well, I wonder whether it could be started as a trail, marked trail through the woods.
Yep. Yep.
Without, all the infrastructure that you're talking about with being able to get, lights and cool boxes and.
that is an intriguing idea. Other?
I'm gonna have to go soon. I definitely want to lend my support to everyone here who's talked about pedestrian and bike safety. And I think that the overall vision is not just a better way to do things, but also really competitive in the end for how this area could be. So it really is a win-win with that. In the meantime, are there things that could be done? I bike to work on campus. Are there things that could be done that are not, overall large things, but if you can think of any more subtle things that could even just help support biking and walking, that would be good, that aren't extreme renovations and expensive. And one of the things I wanted to ask, so I found out about this actually at work at lunch. I hadn't read the thing yet. Can you tell me, this came up at campus on work, the recycling. When we sort our recycling, where is it actually going?
Do you want?
Is it really just being burned? Are we sorting just to make ourselves feel better?
No.
Right now?
No.
And someone
No.
who's.
So there are
faculty said that.
There are some communities that are doing that. There are some communities that continue to do their single sort, separate collection and take it to the exact same spot that they're taking their municipal solid waste to go through the same process. We are not doing that. We did not think, and council agreed with us, that met Orono's vision. So instead of paying $40 a ton to dispose of recycling, we're paying about $225 a ton to dispose of recycling. So your question is not as simple as yes or no, because I can tell you what we are doing. We are paying for a separate collection that takes the recycling to a recycling center. The markets around recycling have dried up in many ways. And the foreign markets have really cracked down on the level of contamination that they will accept in recycling. So if somebody takes their mayonnaise jar and they don't really wash it, they just kind of, kind of thing, and it is pretty heavily contaminated, and you think you've done a great job to get it into the recycling bin, when it gets to the processing center, it's going to go into somebody's landfill. So the amount of material that gets recycled is directly related to how clean you put that material in the bin. But yes, it is the same single sort recycling process that we have always used. We get wrapped up in what other communities are doing, but we're not them.
Because, you know, I mean, if it isn't feasible, I think we can handle it. I just don't want to support, I mean, I don't want to spend the time thinking, just, you know, doing the activity to make ourselves psychologically think that we're recycling.
Yeah, I think, Tamara, we had a discussion in council about whether we wanted to have pretend recycling to keep people in the habit of recycling.
Right.
And that was not something that we wanted to do. So we felt like it was worth putting a little money where our mouth was. If we wanted to have as effective recycling program as we could.
There is no doubt that over time, so we're all in this holding pattern while we wait to sort out how municipal solid waste is going to be managed in this region. And I hope, I was on an executive session, so I can't talk about what happened in it, but I can tell you that when we came out of that executive session, we talked about giving the MRC leadership the ability to try to sell the plant to a private partner. So I think we might just be coming to the end of the what's going to happen road and starting back on the let's get it done road. But when that happens, I think we're going to rethink as a region how we manage waste. The municipal solid waste, your trash is one element. Your recycling is another element. Bulky items, tires, looking at all sorts of ways to reduce waste. I think it's important for people to know that people who are in the leadership trying to figure this process out, words like zero waste are passing our lips. It is not, there is a delay in getting everything together, but the commitment to a good result at the end of the day has not diminished. So we're in a holding pattern, but for now, your recycling goes to a recycling plant and is processed as recycling. And we hope you'll continue to do that. Other items of discussion? Anything you want the council to know about our public services? Dan?
You can appreciate it.
So what, thinking about like service levels, and I think about like how do people, we get more people engaged in these conversations. There's gonna be so much exciting stuff going on, and people will be really passionate about the Forest Avenue project. Brought a lot of good energy and we've got a policy that I think people are going to find really responsive to their concerns. And for me, as someone who aspires for a council seat, I think it's really important that the town be really responsive when people come forward, like Michael did today, and like we heard in the room today about concerns about their safety, not feeling safe in their neighborhoods or comfortable in their neighborhoods. So how, in terms of the service level that we have for your two departments, what do you think of, can you articulate kind of what you think the service expectations are from the community? Have we ever, we don't have data, do we? We're 3.9 on a 5-point scale in terms of capital spending or anything like that, do we? We don't have those kind of metrics that we could. So how do you, I know I've joked with you, I promised everybody on Page Place, if I get elected, you're gonna pick up our garbage every day, and I'm kidding. But so what are the expectations? How do you give voice to what you think the expectations are?
Well, I think at budget time, we talk a lot with town council about those service levels. And service level, depending on what the service is, can mean different things, right? So it's not always necessarily that we clear the streets in 22 hours. That's not but it's always more associated with the level of resources that town council has given us to achieve whatever that goal might be. So when I think about service level, I think about meeting the expectations that we talk about at budget time. So do what we said we were going to do.
Right.
But also during that process, work really hard to make sure that the resources that have been allocated for a certain task are expended responsibly. So we're always looking for ways to be more efficient in all of our aspects, in all aspects of what we do. And I think that is a commitment that just from me as the director, I think that's a commitment that is part of our culture at Public Works. So, to me, it's, and I don't necessarily like to tie successful service delivery to, well, nobody called, so we must have done great. That's not the kind of thing that I tie.
Info@orno.org is,
Yeah, I mean,
right on the back of my hand and gift everybody I meet.
yeah, I think every resident's going to have a certain expectation, some lower than what we strive for, some higher. But I'd like to think that we're hitting it a little bit higher than the middle, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I think it's more related to the, are we putting that effort out there? Are we really doing what we said we would do when we articulated our service level at budget time?
And
That is very closely tied to the resources that we ask for.
And I also think a priority in all of the departments, or one of the measures we use, is have we responded to the concerns that we've heard? Responded doesn't mean fix them all, because some concerns that we hear, we simply don't have the resource to fix, or it might not be legal for us to fix it. But every concern deserves being heard, and the explanation of either how we're going to fix it and then follow through, or why we can't fix it. And I think Rob and Chris's shops are exemplary at that. But that would be something that's important. I also think that the things that we say we're going to do on budget at budget times, those are not just spoken of in a workshop and then forgotten. I don't know if folks here have taken the time to read the budget documents, but if you go online, you can look at the 2023 current year budget documents, which lay out everything that Chris and Rob told you today in terms of what their objectives are, what their methods are, their resources, and then also talk about what staff sees as areas of discussion around setting a service level. And we really try to lay that out for the council to be able to talk in general. With Public Works, by far, the biggest service level discussion we have, usually most every year, is around sidewalk maintenance. And
In the winter.
in the winter. And we went through a time where we didn't want to fill that seasonal laborer position. So Rob was down a person, and we explained when we made that decision exactly what it was going to mean for winter maintenance on the sidewalks, because you're taking away a dedicated person, and it slows everything down. And so when council made that decision, they understood exactly what the implications were going to be. I'm not sure the first time we had that conversation, they really understood that we were not exaggerating. And then we got that person back.
One of the things, I've been through only 2 budget cycles so far. One of the things that I've learned is that the department heads, when they present their prospective budgets to council, are explicit in the kinds of things that they can deliver at the funding level that they're requesting. They don't oversell themselves. They do a heck of a great job, but they don't try to, sell us on something that they can't deliver. So council is very aware of what we're committing to. So we're not trying to overcommit our departments, under-resource them at the same time. And for me, that's been really important because I want to make sure that the staff feels really supported, that we're not asking them to do something that is they can't do. And I want to make sure that the community understands that they're getting their best bang for their buck, right? So if you have concerns, though, you know, as a counselor, I have people like stop me and say, well, what about plowing this sidewalk? What about filling this pothole or whatever? And that's the kind of feedback that I think counselors need to hear more of, right? So we can't all talk to everybody, but when we collectively talk to a lot of people, then we can bring them to the table during budget season. This is just about the time that it's really important for us to start hearing that stuff.
Yeah, so I thought of something to say when Rob was talking a bit about service levels and what we can expect. And the plowing this year has been, my only complaint is it's almost been too enthusiastic, as in I've woken up in the night listening to the plow truck and got really excited that there'd be lots of snow and then disappointed that there wasn't much. But I'm not really complaining about that. But the problem I do have, and Rob is well aware of this, is my street was badly made when it was last redone. And so it collects water in the middle because the drains are uphill of the bottom of my driveway. And in an effort to try and minimize the pond, I spend a lot of time trying to shovel snow out of the drains so that the street will drain. So enthusiastic plowing is actually detrimental to my efforts. And I also wonder whether I'd really rather someone came by and helped me shovel out the drains rather than plowed so much. Is that a lot to ask?
Well, Fiona, we have 650 of them, so it's. And
But I don't think that most streets collect quite as much water as I do.
I will say, so there's a project coming to Beach Street in the spring. So that project is going to start in June. So the drains will work when we're finished. So hopefully you won't have to worry so much
Next
about.
winter, I won't worry about it. I do
Yeah.
have to say, when you did Mill, at least I don't have the whole of Mill coming around the corner into the street anymore. So that's something. All right, well, that's reassuring. Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Perry, did you have something?
I do. Well, it's a very short-term council member, a short-time council member. I'd just like to say how fortunate I think we are to have Rob and Chris running those important departments. We have excellent employees, and the leadership in those departments is first rate. And thank you very much for the job that you do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And the
All
fact
right,
that
I don't want,
school graduates is an even a bigger bonus.
Reflection on school administration, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Civil town.
yeah.
Appreciated your responsiveness to anything that I might either call or email. I've always appreciated that. Thanks for holding the meetings and good to see some of you that I haven't seen for a while.
Linda, you come to all of these meetings. I just want to make sure if you have something you want to say that we hear.
I actually I have no complaints. I'm sorry. I know. I just like to be aware of what's going on.
Well, thank you for continuing to show up, and we will appreciate seeing you each time.
One of the things about Orono that's interesting, and it's reflection, I think, a lot on the town staff, is that people are happy here, but they can't articulate why they're happy. There's like, things are good. They can't, you know what I mean? It's hard to sometimes put their finger on exactly what about it is. You know, I find that really interesting as I talk to people about, you know, what are your municipal concerns? I don't think I have any, and so it's very interesting. So.
I think that's a wonderful way to end if people are ready. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it, and we'll make sure that we I took a lot of notes and we will be in touch, and I will talk to the police chief about College Ave.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.